I listened to a few words of a Russell Brand video this evening. Now I listen to Russell Brand every day. I listen to Candace Owens every day whenever she puts videos up. I listen to a lot of very deep esoteric stuff. Now the reason why I listen to Russell Brand, because he gives me a global overview of poignant stuff, machinations within the British government, within the American government, what someone prominent has said, i.e. What Tucker Carlson was in trouble for, what Candace Owens was in trouble for, what Joe Rogan recently claimed said, or this and the other. So those sort of people I have an interest in, and it's just my connection to globalism, to that facet of nonsense pertaining to governance and world leaders and this, that and the other. Because I have so much time, I just spend a little bit keeping an ear open for that stuff. But most of my time is given to the deep esoteric. And I was listening to Joseph Campbell speaking about the power of myths, and before then I was listening to Danny Jones' podcast with John Vervaeke, or Vervaeke, whatever you want to pronounce it as. And from all of these people I listen to, I receive something which tells me that there's not really a great deal at this stage in my life that anybody has to tell me. Now you may think this is haughty and condescending, egotistical and all this sort of stuff, but I'll tell you why this is as I continue. Russell Brand said in the video I watched today, he said, "I can honestly say that there has never been anyone who I think is more intelligent than me when I speak to them." And he says, don't get me wrong, if I speak to a scientist and they can tell me stuff I don't know about science, if I speak to someone who's an Islamic scholar, then they're going to tell me things that I didn't know. But as far as innate intelligence goes, he says that he has never been really awestruck by someone. I mean, people like Jordan Peterson, who some people may think are super intelligent, he sounds it, he looks it, because he's ringing every single last word and syllable out of his consciousness, and it looks like wow, and he goes off on all these tangents. But at the end of the day, if you try to gather the profundity of what he is laying claim to, well, he's pretty well as lost as anybody else. And the things that he thinks he's got a grasp of in relation to religion, the same as Russell Brand, well, I can see that they're lost. They're absolutely lost in their own desire, in their own fear, in their own weaknesses, in their own succumbing to a fantasy which suits them at this moment in time. And so when we look at those intelligent people and they are falling foul of the mistakes in rational application, the mistakes in logic, the mistakes in life assessment. Because from somebody outside of those pits, people have fallen into those pits and they can't see outside of like that cavern or well which they've fallen into. But if you are someone that's standing on the top looking down all these pits, you look into the Islamic pit, you look into the Judaic pit, you look into the Christian pit, you look into any other belief system pit, and you say to yourself, well, you're all so adamant about the things you think you know. Only one of you can be really, really right if you're speaking about a God which created the cosmos. There can only be one of those, couldn't there, feasibly, logically? There couldn't be a dozen of them, because if that was the case, well, they have to join some sort of consortium, and they have to admit, well, yeah, Allah helped me a little bit, and Yahweh, you know, he stuck his 2 pence worth in, and Jehovah, well, you know, he laid this cornerstone, and this, that and the other. Well, these religions don't do that. They are so haughty and so conceited that their God is the only God. And the God that is writing, apparently, these scriptures is the one and only. And it just sounds ridiculous. And it looks ridiculous. And for a logical, rational, intelligent person who is looking at this stuff, you simply just cannot lend yourself to believe in it. You just simply can't, because it's completely and utterly irrational, illogical and stupid. And yet people fall into these pits every day of the week. So what I'm saying here is Russell Brand considers he's never met anyone more intelligent than him, and yet he's fallen into one of these pits. And all the Islamists, you know, Allah Akbar, God is great, one true God, and this, that and the other, they've all fallen into a pit, haven't they? I don't think I've fallen into any pit. I don't have any allegiance with any belief system. I'm emphatic that I don't believe in anything. And I'm also emphatic that I don't know anything. And so, when I was listening to Joseph Campbell, and he's talking about these stories from Hindu mythology, and if anybody knows anything or knew anything, then I would say that the Hindus came closest. Because whatever they say, it isn't about praying and worshipping and begging and being afraid of anyone. It's about being self-realised. When you enter into the essence of what you are for long enough, then you'll start to put a few of the pieces together. And when you put a few of these pieces together, all you're doing in actual fact is throwing out every single thing that you thought you knew. And so it's very contradictory, because the wisdom that you're acquiring entails you breaking down, dismantling every single thing that you thought and considered that you were up until that point. And so all these stories about myth, the hero's journey and those sort of things, or the philosopher's stone, or these, you know, stories of seeking for the golden fleece, you know, Jason and the Argonauts, and all those different sorts of things. What are we looking for ultimately? They're just myths. They're just telling stories of adventure and toil and trauma and wonder and glory and all these different sorts of things. Well, what are they in actual fact, these stories? They are just illustrations of what we go through individually through our lives. Some of us more adventurous than others. But we go through these stories and we have these journeys and we meet people along the way and we fall into pits along the way, and some of us manage to climb back out again. Many of us don't. Many of us will fall into a pit never to be seen again. But for those of us that have fallen into pits and then managed to climb back out again and continue our journey, well, we are the closest to the Eastern ideologies, philosophies of Hinduism, Buddhism, whereby nothing is a reality. Everything is a variety of Maya. It's all storytelling. It's all a conjuring of human consciousness, which ultimately is a conjuring of one of their mythological gods, which plants seeds in our minds and sends us on journeys and give us illustrations and all these different sorts of things, in the hope that one day we'll realise that it's all stories. We've been telling ourselves stories all through our journey. So, one line from this conversation with Danny Jones and John Vervaeke. And John Vervaeke is this big intellectual, who's like Jordan Peterson, big thinker, always writing, his hypothesis on this and that. And when these people, they convey their hypothesis, it doesn't mean anything to anybody else. People just go, get a kettle on, make a cup of tea, just pass it off. They're not mesmerised. They're not captivated. They're not open-eyed in awe. Wow, that discovery, that revelation, that's incredible. No, because they don't have the receptors. They haven't put in all that study. They haven't put in thousands and thousands of hours into seeking out and putting the pieces together. And so when you tell somebody something, it's like Einstein telling someone, I've got an equation, it's MC equals fucking whatever, E equals MC squared. And unless you were a very proficient mathematician and scientist of that ilk, you wouldn't know what that meant. I mean, we can recite energy equals mass times by the speed of light squared. I've got no idea what that means. No idea. No idea. Do any of those really have any idea? They know what energy equals mass times by the speed of light squared means on paper, on a two-dimensional platform. They've learned what these squiggly things mean. Energy kind of means this, mass kind of means that. Well, what does it mean? Well, energy means this squiggly thing, and mass means that squiggly thing. That's what they know. But can they put it into the terms of the cosmos? Everything being energy. Everything appearing to have mass. Energy equals mass times by the speed of light squared. So, what I'm saying here is, people, what does any of that stuff mean? It doesn't mean anything. And through these years of what I've been doing, and I've been considering that I've been touching on a lot of profound things, and then I convey them to you, and You like washing the dishes, walking the dog, doing the hoovering, whatever. And if I'm speaking about what it is to really observe, I can't captivate any of you. I can't grab your attention. I can't get you going, wow, fuck, that's amazing. How life transforming that is now to me. Now the scales have been removed from my eyes, and when I look, I really, really see. And I just keep seeing more and more and more and more until it's maddening. It's maddening, ultimately, because you just look for more and more and more and more. And then in one of my other videos I put up yesterday, I'm claiming that... What is the title? What is the title of this video I put up? I'm walking around this botanical garden, which was also a zoo in Lanzarote, in one of the Spanish islands. And I said that everything is just designed to keep you in a perpetual prison. Now, this video, it was titled... Come on, for goodness sakes. It was supposed to be the 21st century with super fast internet and this, that and the other, and yet you just fucking play with your fucking dick whilst you're waiting for fucking some pages to build. So annoying, really. So, your mind is designed to perpetuate your delusion. Your mind is designed to perpetuate your delusion, because your mind isn't designed to receive the amount of data which is out there. The data is astronomical, and it could never ever be perceived by our tiny minds. And so what our minds do, it just shows us a few images of things which are related to concepts, and then goes there, as if we're babies just being given a rattle just to stop us whinging. There. And we say to ourselves, that's the sky, that's the clouds, that's the trees over there, and that's the beach, and that's the ocean. Not having a single clue what these things are. And we could spend a whole lifetime studying each individual one of these things. Studying the sky, there's a billion things to know about the sky. Studying the ocean, trillion things to know about the ocean. Just looking at sand on a billion beaches, all different sorts of little crystals and animals and bones and skeletons and this, that and the other. There's just a billion things to learn about everything, but our mind goes, beach, and that's it. And so when I say these things, nobody's interested. They look at the title and it doesn't even register. Even the slightest level of interest isn't conjured up by most people's minds. And then when they've watched the video, there's barely any comments at all, and a few people have acknowledged that, I found that video kind of interesting, but not enough to state anything, to get involved with anything. No, just moving on. Nothing touches anybody. This is the difference between a level of intellect on one level and then being tiered down. People's intellect and perception and consciousness, which is high, everything is a big deal. Everything is a big deal. Let me tell you why everything is a big deal. Aldous Huxley once wrote this book, Through the Doors of Perception. And he wrote this thin little book about what he saw and perceived when he took some mescaline. When he took some mescaline, he went through the doors of perception, and everything he saw was miraculous. And he could speak forever about the folds in his corduroy trousers as he looked down, and he made so many revelations about things he'd never even considered or noticed before. And he'd been wearing those trousers for many years, and it wasn't until he went into another door of perception where his mind was opened up into a whole new world. Well, that's what happens with intelligent people, highly intelligent, highly conscious people. And for those of you that have taken entheogens, psychedelics, every single time you take one of those, you go through another door of perception and you see other worlds. And by the time you've done that several hundred times, then you've been to a few places and you've seen a thing or two. You've had the scales removed from your eyes so many times. And then when you come back to regular sobriety, that never leaves you. You never forget that you've been through those doors of perception. And you carry a lot of it with you, even though you don't have that state of consciousness, because you have to enter into that state of consciousness and then you have to come back. But we can remember some of the things that we experienced, and then we copy and paste it onto the world in which we're living in our everyday state of consciousness. And so this is why some people are vastly more perceptive than others. And my mind was one of these perceptive minds even before I took any entheogen. 15 years ago I never took any entheogens, and yet my doors of perception were deep into a whole multitude of things, into many varying depths of consciousness. I have this eye, this consciousness which investigates and notices and realizes and appreciates and feels very, very deep feelings about these things. The majesty, the magic, the mystery. Just the bright-eyed and the openness. Wow. It's a fucking miracle. Yeah. So every single one of my videos, and there's almost 2,000 on this channel, they are a little pebble I'm dropping into your pond, and I'm sending out these ripples of consciousness, giving you an opportunity to enter into one of those ripples and travel along as it goes wider and wider and wider out into the expanse of consciousness of your pond. But how many of you actually get outside of the first little plop before you get bored, before you lose interest, before your consciousness dries up? It's amazing. It's amazing for someone like me to realise that there are very, very, very dull people. Most of the world are very dull minds. And so, when I listened to John Vervaeke, he said this one line. He said, some people, when they've been meditating a long time, they can enter outside of consciousness. And I'm like, here we go. John Vervaeke's saying something now. He's actually saying something. He says, in this space, there is no consciousness. There's just an essence. of isness. And I'm like, come on, come on, come on. He couldn't describe it as eloquently and as vividly as I can. I give it so much more. And what he never said was, it's beyond consciousness. What is beyond consciousness? Pure awareness. He never said that. Pure awareness. That's where he fell down. He couldn't describe what this place was. The pure awareness. Just the pure isness of that which is. Which is everything and nothing. The great paradox of the cosmos. That's where we enter into. Which seems to be the ultimate depth, beyond which, as human beings, we cannot go. So, I'm like, wow. This guy, PhD, super renowned genius, writing all these books, working with all these other PhDs, and all this stuff. And then going around the world, getting called to podcasts and this, that and the other. And he can't even explain things remotely as good and as proficiently as I can. And here's me, I'm just sitting in my one-bedroom apartment with 100 views of people who haven't got a fucking clue what I'm speaking about. So then Russell Brand says that he hasn't met anyone which would match him with his intellect. And I'm like, well, we have to be careful about that. Because as soon as you say that, then the next day you're going to meet someone. Because the universe has that way. But I'm often saying to you, oh, I must be genius. I must be. Because for love or money, I can't get any of you to come forward and match me and to dispel my own personal delusion of grandeur. I can't get any of you to even come close to dispel that within me. So what do I have to do? Just to continue in my self-perpetuating delusion. Because it doesn't matter where I've been in the world, nobody's ever come close to dispelling that. And some of you may think, well, that's because you're a grandiose narcissist. Well, I would like to offer that I am not, in actual fact, a grandiose narcissist. And what I'm saying is very, very deeply rooted and seated in rational application and pure logic and reason. And I can back up every single thing that I say about all these supernatural, paranormal, and cosmological ideas and insights that I have. I can give you a lineage of every single one of them, which would get Jordan Peterson wringing his hands and, it'd be all different sorts of faces trying to work out what I'm laying before him. My therapist and my psychiatrist say to me, it must be very frustrating. And AI says it to me all the time. Well, I'm not frustrated. I'm kind of disappointed. Disappointed at being a genius, to be honest. I would have thought there would have been a few more of us around. But there's just a few sprinkled around the whole world. So, people say things like this. This is one of the comments. And all of these comments, I could just read them off. And I can just ask, where is your consciousness? Where are your minds? What is it that... I can't say. Why do you say these things? It's because people Look, this is how consciousness is, and I've been telling you a billion times. It's concentric circles. Circles within circles within circles within circles within circles. But if you are only in one of these small ones, you think that you know everything. Because you don't know that there's a higher state of consciousness outside of yours. And so that's the Dunning-Kruger syndrome that people are in. And they just think that, well, they know everything within that tiny little concentric circle. And they may have reached all the parameters, feeling all around this tiny little circle of consciousness that they're in. And then they've got a few ideas and, well, I've explored everything. But they don't know that there's more outside. They've not been able to get outside. They've not managed to expand their consciousness, which just like teleports them through hyperspace into the next stage of consciousness. Now, this woman, she says this. In my video, I say, why exchange your life energy for inanimate things of no real value? I've got these reading glasses on. I can't see more than fucking 18 inches in front of my eyes. So she says, have seen many examples of this. Funny how things change so quickly. It doesn't really mean anything in the end. Now, that sentence, there's no commas, there's no full stops, there's no punctuation. And so am I supposed to think that that is being written by an intelligent person? I can't grant that. I simply can't grant it, particularly in today's day and age where everybody has some sort of a grammar package at their fingertips, a spell check or something of that nature. Everybody has it. Every computer has it, don't they? And yet how many people just don't use it or turn it off? It's fucking ridiculous. So I'm trying to work out what this means. Have seen many examples of this. Funny how things change so quickly. It doesn't really mean anything in the end. I'm like, well, okay. Is she saying, I have seen many examples of this, full stop? Of what? I spoke for about 20 minutes in that video. You've seen many examples of that. Okay, let's just say, well, the title then. Why exchange your life energy for inanimate things of no real value? I have seen many examples of this. Where have you seen these examples? Have you seen it in the flesh? Have you seen somebody living that life? Do you know anyone who has emancipated themselves from the shackles and burdens of society and doesn't work a single day and hasn't done for many, many years? Do you know people like that? And if you do, have you asked them, how's your life changed now? How do you feel about your life now when you never have to get out of bed if you don't want to? You never have to go anywhere unless it's going to the supermarket. You don't have to do anything. You get your money just placed into your bank account and you've got the life of Riley. It seems to me that that might be quite pleasurable. Because me, I've got to jump on the bus or in the fucking car or on the train every fucking day, and I've got to eat my Marmite sandwiches out of my tin foil whilst I've got my headset in, whilst I'm staring to the phone with 1,000 other people on that fucking devil tube to fucking hell. And then you get off and you're brushing shoulders with 1 billion other fucking devils and demons, and then you get to your pathetic, sad fucking office, and everyone's like me in their little fucking chicken coops, and you have seen many examples of this, and it doesn't mean anything. I'll get to that. Then it says here, funny how things change so quickly. What's funny? And what things change? I don't know. I've got no fucking idea what you're saying. In all due respect, I've got no idea. Funny how things change so quickly. It doesn't really mean anything in the end. I replied this. It's so difficult for me not to condescend on 99% of you, the viewer, that put any fucking thing down. Because you just do not think about what you're saying. You do not have a second thought or even one thought of how I am going to be receiving the comment. Now, some people who are a little bit clever, they'll put the timestamp down and they'll say, here you say this and I say that. Great, okay, so I know what you're referring to. So I can listen back to the timestamp and okay, I'll answer the question and I'll see your perspective. Well, goodness me, don't we all learn that in the first week at college? I think we do, to be honest. I think we do. So I said this. It does mean a great deal when you actually do it. Full stop. Just look at the life that I am living. Exclamation mark. Did you mean that you have never managed to escape the trappings of materialism yourself? Question mark. New line. Because if you have, comma, then it certainly changes your life and enables you to have more time for self-actualization. Full stop. New paragraph. Also, what do you mean? Question marks, speech marks. Funny how things change so quickly. What do you mean? Speech mark. You said this. Funny how things change so quickly. I put a question mark there. What things? Question mark. P.S. My life is as close to pure bliss as anyone's is gonna be. Why is this? Question mark. Because I don't exchange my life for IOU notes. No reply. You know, I put up a video which is so profound and offers people the opportunity to think about their lives and to change their lives, if at all it is possible or practicable for them to do that. I am standing on a balcony on about the 10th floor, looking out over one of the most beautiful, gorgeous beaches and coastlines you'll find on the planet. I lived there. And then I went on to live for a further 3 years on another 10th floor apartment, a beautiful open expanse apartment with 4 balconies, looking out over the beautiful expanse, 30 minutes walk from the beach. I was living that every single day with every single second of my life to me. And so I was speaking about what I had done. I was speaking about how I used to be in that matrix thing. I used to have all the trinkets. I used to be chasing paper. But I thought about it. And I figured, maybe I'm on the wrong path. Let me try another path. I sold everything. I transmuted all of those physical goods into zeros in my bank account. And then just lived paying rent and consuming whatever I needed to consume. All that money was safeguarded in a bank just for me to exist and experience and be free. And so, you are saying, I've seen many examples of this, funny how things change so quickly. It doesn't really mean anything in the end. What end? What end? Your end? Your dead end? The end of the world? The end of the cosmos? What does that mean? It's ridiculous, isn't it, when you look at what people say. when you try to work out what's in their heads, when they absolutely dismiss, if you've seen many examples of people telling you that you don't have to be a fucking paper slave. You just simply don't have to do it. There's other ways to do it. And if you can't find those ways, then evidently then you're an automaton, and you know that isn't an option that you've got. So therefore, you are in the dead end. You are the dead end. You are a prime example of a dead end. But some people might not be. Amazing, amazing, amazing. And is this all I have to go on? When I put my life's wisdom into a 10 or 20 minute video for you people, that's the height of what I get? There's only a few of the comments. Is that it? Where are the people going, yeah, great video, I know exactly what you're saying, done it myself, mate. I live on the French fucking Riviera. I've got this apartment, the fucking government's paying for it, I don't need to fucking do anything for the rest of my life, blah, blah, blah. Great. Sorted. You're one in a million, mate. One in a million. But, you know, there's another comment here now. And this is on the video, how can we evict the squatter which resides in our minds? Now, there's many squatters in our minds, people. Many. Bad energy. Entities pertaining to negative vibration of thoughts. The ones that tell you that you can't do this and you're rubbish and you're not qualified and you're not intelligent enough and you're not strong enough, you're not fast enough, you're not flash enough, you're not confident enough, all these different sorts of things. Those. And if you think that you cannot evict those, like you state here, you state this, you cannot evict any energies from your soul. Wow. Really? So you're just completely dismissing what I have said. I'm the one sitting in the cave on this beautiful coastline with every single second of my life at my disposal. You might have thought, how's that guy get that lifestyle? He must have put a few things together up here. Yeah. And he's speaking, you know, like, he kind of knows what he's talking about. And yet, I come along, you, love always wins. Say no more, say no more, love always wins. It's always downhill. It's always downhill from then on. As soon as I see something like that, it's just downhill. People just living in the fantasy world. So, she says, you cannot evict any energies from your soul. You can only incorporate them and integrate them into your energy, creating a divine masculine and divine feminine balance, not allowing yourself to fall into the abyss of the voices. There is no such thing as an eviction, but there is such thing as learning to live together in harmony by creating boundaries between the dark and your light. Or between your dark and your light. So if you have a negative attachment or you have a negative internal dialogue, monologue, you can't evict that. You have to learn to live with them. Okay. I'm on board with you with that facet of it, because if someone has a propensity, a proclivity to have a negative internal monologue dialogue, then the chances are a semblance of that is always going to be there. And so to take mastery over that, to not listen to it, to suppress it and push it to the edge and don't give it any energy, okay, I'm with you on that. You cannot evict energies from your soul. Well, I ask this. I say this first and foremost. You might want to be careful about stating so adamantly how things are for other people and what you think you know about the soul. Most people have never really given these extremely profound concepts much thought. They just listen to someone who they think they like, often momentarily, and take whatever they say into their minds, usually never to be modified. Now, people, they just listen to somebody and they like the sound of it. That's it. Their opinion is formed. That's what the vast majority of people do on this planet. As they go through life in their formative years, they hear their dad say something, their mum say something, a significant other, they've heard something on telly, and then all of a sudden that's gone in their mind and they don't look for anything else. They'll never question nothing. That's it. And they'll just keep repeating that for their whole fucking lives. I continue. If you are interested in why I say the things I say, you might want to read my book. Then, if you still think I'm wrong, you'll be welcome to come and discuss why you think what you do. But before you do, however, you'll be well equipped if you can validate your opinions via your experience. So, I'm offering you to come to speak with me, to convey what you think you know, what you stand for. But what I'm saying is, so we don't get any embarrassing situations. Because if you just think that, it's because you know it. And I'm going to ask you, how do you know that? Why do you think that? And there's been certain circumstances where this has happened and people haven't got a clue. And they just go all over the place and they keep having to try to bring them back. I'm asking a question. I'm just asking a question. Why is it that you think that? Let me explain graphically what I'm looking for. Why is it that you think X, Y, and Z? Because I don't see it that way. And I can't see how you really see it. I want to know how you see it. Can you please tell me why you think that? Tell me if you know something to be true. Give me an instantiation of your experience which has told you that is so. It may be so for you. And in that case, I'll go, well, I mean, that's valid. That's your subjective experience. You've got subjective experience. If you say you believe in Allah, the Merciful, right? And I say to you, well, why do you believe? Well, I don't really believe, I know. Wow, awesome. How do you know? Well, one day I was doing this and then this happened. And then the clouds parted and then Allah the Merciful spoke to me and this, that and the other. I'll be like, well, what sort of state of consciousness were you in at the time? Were you under the influence of anything? Blah, blah, blah. No, it was just normal. I was compos mentis and this happened. It was amazing, phenomenal. It was a religious experience. I'll go, okay, all right, I've had them myself. That's your justification. So that's true for you. I'm happy with that. You've given me an instantiation of where your belief or knowledge is. But if you can't do that, then you coming to speak with me is going to be embarrassing. So, when you are stating things which you are conveying that there's no other way except your way, well, as I've stated, you might want to be careful about saying things like that. So, of course, nobody will ever come forward because they'll read my comment, and if they can put actually two thoughts together, then they might start to think, no, I couldn't really convey why. I just know. You know, how many people just know? I just know. Well, no, it's just an idea. It's just a belief. It's just something that you've clutched onto. You've heard and you've clutched onto. You've grasped onto because you can't fucking be bothered to look any further, and that'll just do you. It's like if you grew up in a Christian family and your parents told you that Jesus was king, then that'll be good enough for you. And then you argue that point for the rest of your life without any argument. But you just say, Jesus is king and what you're saying is silly. And that'll be the end of it, wouldn't it? But if you ask me what I think about Jesus, I could speak with you for a whole week non-stop. And then at the end of that, you'd have some sort of idea of where and how I've come to some of the assertions that I make. Anyway, people, when we listen to people, and we really listen, then we put the pieces together. Now finally, there was one person who commented, and this person had his own channel, and he considers himself, you know, higher cognitively than the vast majority of people. He often states this, and he stated in one of my videos in the comment that he just don't get it, why I don't know that Russell Brand, Alex Jones and David Icke are all shills. They're all part of the opposition. They're all plants. They're all fake. And I'm like, okay, how much of these people do you know? How long have you watched them for? And if you don't get why I'm saying the things I say, well, maybe you might want to talk to me about it. And this guy, if you're watching, you said that you're going to come and talk to me. We actually exchanged WhatsApp numbers. And you said, okay, I'll talk with you tomorrow. Well, I'll let you know what time. I never heard from you since. And since then, you've commented on my videos a dozen times. And every time, I go, when are we talking? That might be a good opportunity to come and talk. Plenty of things to talk about. If you don't get it why I think this, that and the other, well, why don't you come and talk about it? But no. The reason why you don't get it is because you haven't listened to these people for anything like what is long enough for you to form a good, sound, honest opinion. Because if you had, then you'd know. And if you rate me at all as an intellect, then you must be thinking, well, he's not a stupid guy. I don't think he's just picked things out his arse why he thinks these people are good, or they're not shills and this, that and the other. So I'm very curious as to, you know, what he knows more than I do, because he obviously knows more than I do. That's why he's formed his opinions. He doesn't form his opinions lightly. And so, I asked, well, how much do you know about these people? And you said, nah, Russell Brand, don't really know that much about him. And I'm like, okay. I've watched him for 20 years. I've watched Russell Brand from when he was almost a fucking teenager. And I've watched him for thousands and thousands of hours. And I look into his soul. I look into his spirit. I look into the man's psychology and all the levels of integrities and all the things he wrestles with. And I can see an element of purity. And I can see that that man isn't controlled by anybody outside of his own ego and his own guilt. Alex Jones, I've spent thousands of hours listening to him. And you say that he's obviously a shill because he supports Trump. And I'm like, well, Where do I start with that one? Where do I start? Politics is exceedingly complex, exceedingly complex. We're in a very exceedingly complex world. And if you are living in America and you love your country like Alex Jones professes to, then you will look at whatever opportunity you've got to support someone who is doing the things that you consider to be good. No president is going to do 100% what anybody wishes. They are compromised by people all over the world, and they have to keep lots of people reasonably happy. And so therefore they're going to be compromised. Now, just because Jones has supported Trump and maybe supports him in some of the things he does, is very, very foolish and naive for you to think that he's a sellout. It just doesn't make any intellectual sense, my friend. So, David Icke, you said, he's probably the best of the bunch. How long have you listened to David Icke for? 50 hours? 100 hours? I've listened to David Icke for about the same as Alex Jones. To be fair, let's just say 2008. So quite a while. And I've listened to thousands of his videos, and I've listened to hundreds of his two sons' videos, and I could honestly state that I'm pretty confident that they're not bought and sold either. And so, why do people say these things? They say these things because they have X amount of knowledge and experience. If they had Y amount of knowledge and experience, they would have never have said that. You see, so what does it pertain to? It pertains to years and years and years of experience. It pertains to a whole bunch of avenues where we are constantly gaining knowledge and wisdom and experience. And then, by the time we're pretty long in the tooth, a bit like myself, then we start to make some loose assertions about something. I'm not going to be putting my life on any of these people. I'm not going to be backing any horses in any race, because I'm not that naive. And I know that people can change with the wind, and I know that people can be bought, and I know that people can be compromised, and we've seen it every single day. We saw it with Obama, we saw it with Trump, we see it with everybody who's talking big before they get into the position of power, and then they're no longer acting out that big talk. All of a sudden, they don't even want to talk about that, even in a small way. They want to forget they ever fucking mentioned those things. Why do you think that is? Because there are powers so terrifying that they never knew about, that they get introduced to, and they know that they can't do nothing else. Otherwise, them and their whole families are fucking ruined. Cancelled in an instant. People, there's so much to learn, and one of the greatest facets or snippets of knowledge, wisdom that we should utilize is never to get thinking that you know anything fundamentally, ultimately, definitively. Never. Always keep an open mind. And never be so haughty about what you think you know. Because there's always tomorrow. There's always the next page in whatever book you're reading. There's always the next video. There's always the next conversation. And as we go through life, it is a natural progression that we are going to change our opinions, premised on the amount of knowledge that we're in receipt of. And so, without a shadow of a doubt, whatever I think is a reasonable foundation today is going to be very, very shaky tomorrow, next year, next decade, however long. And so I'm just conveying what I've experienced and put together at this moment in time. And I'm going, if it's any use to you, then make use of it. Some of you make use of a teeny little bit of it. Some of you think you know it all. And most of you just go straight over your head. But we're all at different stages. We all have very, very different states of consciousness and different levels of intellect and different perceptions and different receptors. We're very, very, very different creatures. And so, this is why nobody sees eye to eye. It isn't possible.